All right, good morning. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by notifying the Omaha World Herald and Nebraska Press Association, OPPD outlets newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on March 14th, 2025. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on OPPD.com and in this meeting room. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. We will conduct a closed session this morning to discuss 4 topics: CEO growth and effectiveness update, CFO appointment and compensation approval, customer growth update, and regulatory compliance item. We will conclude this morning's closed session no later than 9:50 a.m. in order to open the WebEx meeting to allow the public and OPPD staff to join. We will begin the public session at approximately 10 a.m. and receive reports from each committee. Director Spurgeon, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, we do. I move that the board go into closed session at this time, 8:02 a.m. to discuss 4 topics. 1, CEO growth and effectiveness update. 2, CFO appointment and compensation approval. 3, customer growth update. And 4, regulatory compliance item. With respect to the CEO growth and effectiveness update, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitive and confidential compensation and retention information, as well as performance evaluation information. With respect to CFO appointment and compensation approval, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitive and confidential compensation and retention information. With respect to customer growth update, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitively sensitive customer information. With respect to regulatory update item, a closed session is needed because the discussion involves legal advice and strategy that is protected by the attorney-client privilege and attorney work product doctrine. Is there a second?
Second. Director Bogner? Yes. Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Director Core?
Yes.
Director Howard is absent. Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Director Spurgeon?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
All right, the motion to go into closed session is passed. This closed session will be limited to 4 topics: CEO growth and effectiveness update, CFO appointment and compensation approval, customer growth update, and a regulatory compliance item. No votes or other board action will be taken. All right, a motion and second is required to reconvene in open session.
Director Bogner? Yes. Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Core?
Yes.
Director Howard is absent. Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Director Spurgeon?
Yes.
Director Williams?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The motion to come out of closed session at 10:06 a.m. is carried. This closed session was limited to discussion regarding 4 topics: CE growth and effectiveness update, CFO appointment and compensation approval, customer growth update, and a regulatory compliance item. No vote or other board action was taken. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by notifying the World Herald and the Nebraska Press Association, OPPD outlets, newsletter, OPPD.com, and social media, by displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on March 4th, 2025. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You are in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. We will take public comments at the end of today's meeting, as well as the board meeting on March 20th, 2025, which will be conducted in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center, and it will begin at 5 p.m. The public may attend in person or remotely via WebEx by going to OPPD.com. Joining me today in person are my fellow board members, Amanda Bogner, Mike Kavanaugh, John Hudson, Craig Moody, Mary Spurgeon, and Eric Williams. Sarah Howard let me know ahead of time that she was unable to attend. We also have members of our executive leadership team, Steve Bruckner, our general counsel with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and OPPD staff. Additionally, we have 22 attendees in this meeting consisting of OPPD employees and members of the public. Today, we'll hear the following committee reports. Director Spurgeon will report on governance, Director Moody on finance, Director Wagner on customer and public engagement, Director Williams on systems management and nuclear oversight. Javier Fernandez will give the safety briefing.
Thank you, Chair Core. I'm going to ask Josh to give us the safety briefing here physically for those in the room.
Welcome everyone for this month's committee meeting. As you can see, we've changed our slide and updated things a little bit, but everything still is consistent with what we've normally gone over. In the event of any type of evacuation from this room, we would use either of our emergency exits, and I would ask everyone to meet out in the parking lot to the north of the building just for accountability. It's nice outside, so I don't feel like we need to go anywhere else outside of that. For fire suppression, first aid, and CPR materials, they're located just outside those doors, and there's plenty of security personnel outside those doors as well that can assist in any event. Also be aware of any type of environmental causes or concerns. Although today is beautiful, tomorrow is going to be a little bit different. So hopefully no one's like my wife planning a trip out on the airplane tomorrow. But please be cautious of driving tomorrow as well and be ready for any type of weather events. And then finally, I also make sure that if you have any questions or need any assistance, I'll be in the room, and there's plenty of, like I said, security personnel outside of the room. So with that, I'll turn it back over and have a great meeting.
Thank you, Josh. I'm going to also ask, you don't have to raise hands, but we do that at OPPD. If you're CPR or AED certified, you can identify yourself. And if you're not, just a good reminder, an encouragement for people to take that certification, that training. It can and has saved lives, could save the life of a loved one. So I highly encourage you to do that and encourage your loved ones at home to do that. You never know when you will need those skills, and it's always handy to have those. On the right side of the slide, you can see the psychological safety checkpoint. I'm also going to change the briefing here, and I'm going to ask every member of the board and executive team to look at those 5 areas and ask yourselves, do you feel psychologically safe? Do you feel like you have an environment where you can share your concerns, share your ideas, stop work if you have to stop work if you don't feel safe doing so? And if for some reason you don't feel psychologically safe, we need to address potentially one of those 5 areas. So just a good self-assessment, self-check on psychological safety. Next slide, please. The focus for March, fatigue. Spring forward came to us last weekend. The clock moving forward means that it can disrupt our circadian rhythms. And so just dedicate some time this month to assess and address your sleep hygiene. It's important to do year round, but especially when the clock changes. Number 2, this is a super important one, the normalized deviation. Throughout the course of time, you may find ways of doing things a little bit different. Everything from the way you jump in your car, the way you drive to work or drive home, the way you do routine tasks in your daily life, the way our team members do their work on a routine basis. Sometimes we change processes, and those processes might not be the safest ones, but they become normal. So I'm going to encourage everyone, and we encourage our employees to not make those normal. If something is not done the right way, but that's the way we've always done it, that has been normalized, and that's an accident waiting to happen. So be careful of those deviations that have been normalized. And the last one, as we begin our planned outage season, our lookout and tag out and hold orders become incredibly important. This is a practice that we do at OPPD, and many facilities do, and they're specifically designed to keep our employees safe from the release of hazardous energy. As we're de-energizing either substations or generation plants, we have a lockout, tag out, hold order where multiple people have to go back and review before you can energize something. You have to check with different people. Right? And that has been incredibly important. This is one of those where it may slow things down, but it saves lives. So very important for us to remind our employees to continue to follow that process. That concludes my safety brief.
Thank you. Director Spurgeon?
Thank you, Chair Core. Yes, the Governance Committee had a little meeting March 11th, following a safety briefing, which is always good. Really like that. Normalizing hazards, you know, at work. That's a great one. And a little review of our committee action items from the other month. We reviewed the CFO appointment and corporate compensation approval, and there'll be a report on this today. Also SD1 Strategic Foundation Monitoring Report, which we will also review today. SG8 Employee Relations Revision, which we will review today as well. Number 6 is a new one to land on our the governance agenda, ethics reporting item. The objective here to confirm with the Governance Committee Chair whether any ethics-related allegations have been reported or investigated. And that's specifically for among the Board of Directors here. I want to take a little time on this item today just to remind anyone listening, members of the public, employees know this well. We have a strategic directive, number 10, which is ethics. And here's what it says. It is essential that OPPD maintain the public trust and confidence in the integrity and ethical conduct of its board of directors and the OPPD employees. Therefore, to ensure the public interest is paramount in all official conduct, the board shall adopt and update as necessary a code of ethics and business conduct, the code, it will be called. OPPD shall also maintain and enforce a code of conduct applicable to all employees. Among other things, the code shall require high ethical standards in all aspects of official conduct, establish clear guidelines for ethical standards and conduct by setting forth those acts that may be incompatible with the best interests of OPPD and the public, require disclosure and reporting of potential conflicts of interests, and provide a process for 1, reporting suspected violations of the code and policies, 2, investigating suspected violations of the code and policies, and 3, providing an annual report to the board. And the Governance Committee has received those reports, and this policy is in the active awareness of OPPD's employees. And I just want to bring that out because there's some governmental entities and subdivisions thereof that find ethics not to be important to them. And I'm really proud to be associated with one that does think it's important. So, appreciation to the directors who thought to give OPPD a governance structure. And I think Director Kavanaugh, you're the one still on the board who was a part of that. So thanks to you and to all of them who did that. We still enjoy that today. The next item was 7, Governance Committee Planning Calendar, which helps us look ahead and see the work that's coming up. We looked at the board work plan briefly, and we adjourned right at 9, and so got a little summary of meeting by email. So I think we go back now to CFO appointment and compensation.
Yeah. Thank you, Director Spurgeon. The next item is the CFO appointment compensation approval. This is something that would be on the approval, for approval on Thursday at the board meeting. As you all know, Jeff Bishop departed from OPPD at the end of February to go back to his home state of Washington. And as I was thinking about selecting a new CFO, it became really obvious to me that we already had the talent in-house to do this work. Someone who's been preparing for a long time, who's done a fantastic job delivering results for OPPD his entire career. And that would be Brad Underwood, who currently serves as Vice President of Systems Transformation. Prior to that role, he served many years in the Financial Services Business Unit, so he's no stranger to finance. And as I was looking for the right person to lead the organization in these times when we have these explosive growth, all good to serve customers, trying to build new generation, transmission, modernize our metering services. All of these has to be done with a solid financial foundation. And I need a steady hand, someone who has the expertise in finance, but also the expertise within OPPD to manage our financial services. I have asked Mr. Underwood to serve as Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and to bring in his current team of system transformation to join the Financial Services Business Unit. So this will be a larger business unit managed now by Brad Underwood. There will be some changes that I expect Brad to look into and work with his peers in making some changes to make the teams work more efficiently in the future. But for now, both business units come together as one. The proposal in front of the board is just a reminder for the public. I, as a CEO, I get to have the obligation to appoint and select the best person. And then the board, in these checks and balances, gets to approve the salary. So I can choose the right person, but if I cannot pay them, then as much as Brad would like to work for OPPD for free, I don't think that would be the case. So this is important, a very important checks and balances where the board gets to approve the compensation. So the resolution that you will see on Thursday is specifically for the compensation. The compensation that's been proposed, you have here in front of on the screen. We're using the same pay scale, the range that we used for our previous CFO, the minimum, maximum, midpoint, that those didn't change. And so we're proposing, acknowledging Brad's experience, years of experience with OPPD, years of experience as executive, instead of starting him at 80%, which would be the norm for someone new to the role, we're proposing to make an offer of 84.25% of the midpoint, which results in a proposed salary of $475,488. That'll be up for the board to consider for approval on Thursday. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Good choice.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but Nico, great choice, and appreciate the quick work you did to get this in place and the planning you had, what's gone before to make this a possibility, and appreciate Brad's the tremendous job that he'll do. So thanks, Brad. Thank you.
And the next item, Strategic Foundation Monitoring Report, SD1. Mr. Forscht.
Right. One Scott. I love coming and being able to talk to SD1 monitoring. You think about vision, mission, and values. It's basically everything does, what it's envisioning its future to be, and what it stands for, and how it does it. It seems like it should be a very complicated monitoring report, but in my mind, it's actually not. We've simplified process over time, but really, as we step into this, what it becomes is a reflection of all of the hard work that everybody else has done to carry out the mission of OPPD, its vision, and to ensure the values are instilled in the way we do our work. So the policy statement you see in front of you here, if we go to the next slide, some number of years ago, the board aligned on the fact that as you review monitoring reports throughout the year, determining that the organization is in compliance with these monitoring reports is a really good way of taking that next level of dive in terms of, are we doing what the us to in terms of strategic direction? And again, there's aspects of vision, mission, and values throughout all of those. So all but 2 of the strategic direction monitoring reports throughout the year, the board determined that OPPD was sufficiently in compliance. You'll notice we added a new column, policy updated. This is a result of the governance workshop and the desire to kind of understand how old is the language, is it aged Is it aged well? Does it warrant some level of future consideration or whatnot? And it's good to see there's quite a dynamic in terms of regularly updating and reviewing those policies, as you can see from the diversity of dates across. If we go to the next slide, there were two SDs throughout the year, reliability and safety, where the board had found that OPPD is taking reasonable and appropriate to comply with the policies as stated. This is just kind of a step down, if you will, from the preceding ranking. It's acknowledging that an enormous amount of work is being done. There are some goals inherent within those policies that might not actually be fully realized or met, but it's a way of A, recognizing the work, and B, that the progress is reasonable and appropriate. We go to the next slide. This is a scorecard that attempts to highlight performance across at the year-end perspective for each of the SDs where there is a metric of some kind in place. I would acknowledge that there are years 22 and 23. Those have been shaded a little bit differently just so that the year 2024 can really stand out on its own. They're not different colors. The green and red look a little different, but indeed it's not different. It's just a way of muting the color. If you take a look, SD4 and SD6, both as you recognize the preceding slide, really are reflected in the red metrics here, and I don't know that we need to dive into those very much other than to say there is alignment between the scorecard, what the board finds, and that's good. The one that stands out just a little bit is SD3, and that is red metric at year end, but in the monitoring report that was of July, it would not necessarily have been red. There was some discussion in the governance pre-committee around this particular item. And I said I would offer it back out to the room if there's any discussion, Director Spurgeon.
Well, it's my suggestion that we keep this one in mind and wait for the finance committee to report and have them expand on that one. It looks like, oh my gosh, the house is on fire. We missed the mark. We didn't miss the target. So, I would suggest that we wait and let the finance team give us more information about that. Ask for that then. The other ones are open for questions.
So moving to the recommendation then of the governance committee, I will hand that over to you.
Do you have any other questions on this report? Anybody understand why reliability was challenged last year? Like a lot, yes. Okay, well, hearing none, the governance committee offers this for approval by the board. But the board find it to be sufficiently in compliance with board policy SD.
Slide.
Any other reflections or questions or comments in regard to this?
If I may,
Sure.
make a quick comment. This is my opportunity to talk about our vision for 2050 and how our strategic directives working well or not, or things that could change. Just a good reminder, there are very few times when we get to see in one screen all strategic directives. Now, granted, this was split into two screens, but it's a really good reminder for the public and for our employees of how hard it is to do what we do and accomplish all the goals that the board has asked us to accomplish. There are always trade-offs. That we have 15 strategic directives, all trying to do really good work in their own realm, and that as much as we would like for all 15 to be sufficiently in compliance and hit every target, sometimes it's not possible, and we're making really good progress in hitting all those. But it's really interesting where you have sometimes competing priorities, where we say rates when we want to be competitive compared to the regional average. Our rates need to be at least 10% below the regional average. Well, that's important. But at the same time, we're making a lot of investments to improve our reliability, and those cost money. And so how do you balance those becomes really, really important. Again, I'm probably stating the obvious here, but I think it's a good reminder for the public and for our employees that the role of the board in governing and setting a vision, setting targets is complicated. You have to figure out how do we move the organization in a positive way, and at the same time acknowledge where there's friction, where there will be sometimes when we may have to sacrifice one SD for another and vice versa, but at the same time trying to move them all forward in time. So thank you for allowing me.
Thank you. Directors, anything else?
No, I also really like seeing all of this kind of in one place at the end of the year, beginning of the next, really to be able to reflect on what we were able to accomplish. The strategic directive framework is phenomenal. It allows us to execute our job, making sure that we are helping you prioritize those competing priorities. So, thank you, Scott.
Thank you. I may offer one thing just as I'm standing here and I'm reflecting on everything. One of the things that always strikes me is, it's the vision, the mission, and the values. And when we see challenges that impact performance, such as reliability, it is always amazing to me that this culture, how it stands in and stands up and really amplifies its values in terms of employees caring for each other, in terms of all of us understanding our passion to serve the community. I'm thinking about the storm restoration efforts and board members and senior team members and employees, everybody just across the street here standing in and standing up. And so while reliability in some instances may be impacted by such a thing, it is always amazing to see how values come in at that moment, how very important they are to who we are and who we intend to become. So, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, let me just piggyback on that for a moment, because I think history for me on this monitor report is it's kind of gravitated to something that is has like structure to it, right? It's objective. Are we achieving the strategic directives? And this strategic directive is mission, vision, values. And so in some ways they kind of don't match up. And so I appreciate what you just described, because I think it really brings to life vision and values aspect of this particular strategic directive. Like this, the other SDs are important, but what you just articulated for me was really helpful to better understand, are we living those values in that way? So thank you for making that comment, connecting those dots. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this whole discussion, really, this strategic foundation, every one of these SDs is connected to every one of the other ones, and having a vision to exemplify fiscal, social, and environmental responsibility, to optimize value to our customer owners, to act transparently and with accountability for the best interest of our customer owners. And we do all this with the good of the whole in mind. I see a puppet master up there with all the strings, and how do we make it all look and work best together? It's because parts and pieces can flex and make adjustments when they need to. So terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the next item is SD8, Employee Relations Revision.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I agree with Director Baldner, who just spoke of the significance, and I think that our SDR strategic directive structure, our governance model is definitely one to be admired. And of course, as I come here to you today to bring a few revisions to SD8, I got to reflect on that over these last few months as well. I am actually thrilled that we have SD8 in the package of strategic directives, because it would have been so simple to ignore anything relative to employees and the significance that employees have within the organization. And so it is for that reason that I want to thank you for including this in the strategic directives, in the mandates you have given to the organization. I had a town hall meeting with a part of our employee base last week to discuss what is in SD8. And I will tell you, a lot of them came into that meeting with intrepidation, concern, those types of things. And I continue to direct them to this strategic directive. That gave many of them comfort. There were about between 300 and 400 employees, and they were comforted by that. We're going to have another meeting. I expect to have an equal number of employees attend that. And so I just wanted to, before I even got into it, thank you for having this in here. So the changes that we are proposing to SD8 are twofold. First and foremost, we want to address our peer group relative to employee engagement. And then secondly, we are going to look at the last item, which hasn't been identified or is identified as the affirmative action plan. Having spoken with the governance committee and with many of you over the last month or so, we felt it necessary, or that it was going to be important in any event, for us to bring forward the change relative to the employee engagement peer group. Right now, we are being compared to, or being looked at relative to all companies. So the universe of companies that is within the group that is doing an engagement survey through the quantum database. So why do we think that it's needed or necessary to compare ourselves to utilities? Well, we had to frankly acknowledge that we are not the same, or we're not similar to every other company. And so looking at the way we, for example, compare ourselves on the customer side of the shop, when we're looking at JD Powers as an example, we are comparing ourselves to utilities, and specifically utilities in the Midwest. And so we are asking for a similar consideration when it comes to employee engagement as well. Now, I've received a question already. Are we only looking to hire employees, for example, from utilities? Are we not looking to hire employees from any and every organization in our region or even in the country? And the answer to that is yes. However, acknowledging that, we also cannot take away or negate the fact that our organization is definitely different. So currently, as we stand, we are being compared, for example, to organizations that may only and likely only have exempt employees, as an example, that do not have the safety culture that we might have, that may not have the operational excellence framework under which we operate. And so acknowledging that, I wanted that to be reflected in this strategic directive. And I think that that would bode well both for us as well as for our employees. And then secondly, again, as we've discussed already, the affirmative action plan, we're asking that we just qualify that statement that we will provide one if it is required based on the executive order, that is Executive Order 12174, that spoke to the executive, or rather the affirmative action plan, not necessarily being required in all its form for federal subcontractors, of which we are. So with that, I will ask if you have any questions, or I would like the opportunity to clarify anything that may be on your mind, or any thoughts you might have.
It might be nice to just remind the public why we consider ourselves federal contractors.
Yes. Steve, you can correct me if I'm wrong, at a high level, we are a federal subcontractor because we serve federal entities. For example, that is the Office Air Force Base, we serve Post Service, United States Post Service, General Service Administration buildings, et cetera, and that qualifies us as a federal contractor. And so therefore, we have to follow rules that apply to federal subcontractors.
That's accurate. Raquel, for the affirmative action plan, could you, if that's no longer required, does that change anything for us in terms of the way in which anything that we were doing to fulfill that previous requirement? Like, is anything changing internally in terms of how we do business around what was previously included in that?
Predominantly not. So some of the things that we do to promote or to develop this diverse and inclusive workforce that we're talking about in terms relative to programming and activities, we will continue to do those. The affirmative action plan generally covers 4 items. The 2 that the executive order has placed lots of emphasis on is around gender and race. So those are the two items. As it relates to veteran status as well as disability, those are still requirements. Most executive, I would say, many executive not necessarily executive orders, many affirmative action plans have always focused on the 4 of those, but I wanted to highlight that those 2, we are being asked definitely not to address those. And so it is for that reason that we're doing that. But the answer ultimately to your question is relative to the way we will be doing this work going forward. I do not expect it to change in the way that others maybe have any concern about.
And if I may, right, this is a reporting item. We just talked about the previous item is the one, our mission and our values. Those don't change. We have a passion to serve, we are our community, and we care about each other. We invest in each other. We are building a work environment that is inclusive, where everybody feels safe, where everybody feels like they have an opportunity to grow, to advance professionally, to grow their skills, et cetera. And so that doesn't change. Well, the culture we have on respect and inclusivity is one that is universal, in my opinion. It's something that helps us really have the culture we have, caring for each other. The work we do can be dangerous, can be hazardous. It's important for us to have a culture of inclusivity, respect, where all of our employees feel the same way. So all of that work continues very clearly. And what we're changing here is to honor and respect the spirit of the executive order, to abide by that because of our status of federal subcontractor.
All of that work continues, and this is the board's strategic directive, right? So to take that a step further, the board's commitment to that, it's fair to say it continues. Okay.
Thank you. And that's exactly the way I described it to our employees as well. I told them if they saw the language changing for which they have a passion around and about, that would be an indication that this board may not be as passionate about it as they once were. But as it stands today, that stands. And so we continue our commitment to this work.
Other comments? I just want to say, I just think that's a lovely, brilliant last clause in there. We will not have to revisit this if there's a change of thought in the federal level. We'll have it in there. We can be flexible. That's great. And I want to say too about the change of the benchmark to utilities. I think that's so wise, because we how many other businesses that we might have compared ourselves with make people get out of bed and go out in the middle of the night and see where the power pole is lying, where the lines are down. We need to be compared with people who do entities that do the same work that OPPD does. So I really affirm that change.
Director Spurgeon, we
Yes.
talked in governance a little bit about the nature of the changes and whether or not this is something we put on the agenda for Thursday for immediate approval or whether or not we want to socialize it with the public for 30 days. Do you want to summarize that conversation?
Well, I think we decided this is pretty much just internal business, the way we do this. It doesn't directly affect customer stakeholders and how we do that, how we serve them. We are simply setting ourselves up to continue to serve them well. And also in the case of the benchmarking, to help our employees feel like they could actually make the desired quartile, decile, because I think it's important for them to feel encouraged that we're taking their needs into consideration. So.
Great, thank you.
Answers your question?
Yep.
To the process, yeah, I agree, internal. I'm glad to hear that we anticipate moving this forward. We'll discuss it at the end of the day. And then to the side, I'm very glad that we are making appropriate updates and that we continue to remain committed to the values of the organization. So yeah, thanks to staff for putting this together. Glad we've got it ready to go.
Thank you, Vice President Purnell.
Thank you.
I believe the governance committee rests. Back to you, Chair Court.
Thank you, Director Bogner.
All right, thank you. I am filling in for Director Howard this month, and we wish her well as she begins her new journey as a new mother. So the Customer and Public Engagement Committee met on March 10th. And we had a very long meeting. We'll end up talking about items 6 and 7 in the course of this meeting today. But I'll give a highlight of some of the other items. So after the safety briefing and review of prior month's action items, we did have a customer payment and affordability trend update from Burton Gable. He provided an overview of current customer care and engagement strategies, highlighting key affordability trends and their impact on consumer behavior. We also reviewed the 2024 economic conditions and forecasted potential challenges and opportunities for customer payment patterns in 2025. So as a committee of a whole, we'll see those types of reports later this year during another all committees meeting. Item 4, customer satisfaction measurements. That's outlines. Okay. We received a report and review of the 2024 customer satisfaction metrics, including highlights from the JD Power updated residential methodology for 2024. So the JD Power changed some of the way that they're going to be measuring going forward. And so we spent some time reviewing how the new metric rating system aligns with the old so that we have better understanding of that going forward. And then during the report, it was highlighted key findings and trends shaping customer experiences and satisfaction in the coming year. So 5 and 6 we'll get to in a moment. So we'll hop to OPPD Community Connect. We did spend some time talking through an engagement approach and background of the OPPD Community Connect initiative and its alignment with incorporating operating plan communication framework. So one of the driving questions here was really, are we getting out of Community Connect what we were hoping for? And so there is some ongoing work in this space. Then we also looked at the board and ELT contact statistics. As many of our public knows, we have a board contact page, and we also receive communication through OPPD Community Connect. And so we looked at the evolving customer engagement patterns and trends with a focus on key metrics from 2024, including the number of contacts, the major events that we had, both expected and unexpected events, our billing inquiry contacts alongside a 5-year trend analysis of customer contacts and a breakdown of contact volume by month. So let's see. Then we're still in the process of developing our work plan for 2025. And then we had a summary meeting. So I think we can move on unless other members of the committee would like to add anything or if there are any questions. Okay, we can move now to the first topic, legislative and regulatory update. Tim?
Thank you, Director Wagner. I will turn it directly over to Seth Boyles, our Manager of Government Relations, to give us an update on our legislative position and the activity this month. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you, team and everybody. I'm gonna start a timer to keep me on time here, so. Here's the agenda. We're gonna look at the state legislative update and then a little bit more on the federal side. It's a lot of items on there, but I think it's just one slide, so let's go to the next slide. So these are the bills that we supported and where they're gonna be in the process. I wanna start out by saying it's day 46, so we're more than halfway through the session. It's gone pretty well so far, knock on wood, so I don't jinx us. But so far, so good. And it seems like everyone's getting along for the most part. It'll get a little bit more contentious when the budget and that stuff starts coming up and some of the other more controversial bills, but so far, so good. LB 43, we've talked to you guys about these a lot. This was making sure on the 10-mile situation between Offutt Air Force Base and the military silos. We all came to an agreement on there on an amendment, got through the governor's already been signed into law. LB 50, this is a Senator DeKay bill, another one that he has on here about nameplate capacity tax, and this is about giving the community colleges back their money. This is on general file now, and it's also been designated a speaker priority, so that's also good.
And said this does not increase the nameplate capacity, it's just how it's distributed.
It's just how it goes back to the old way. Before they were losing their money, now they're getting it back. Nothing on it on increasing it. There are bills that will come up that I'll address on that as well. LB 117, this is about exemption for electricity and other services. This isn't gonna go anywhere, especially since the state's still in a hole in the budget. We're still gonna figure that out, but it's good that we keep this on there and support it because it would help out our folks as well. Next slide, please. Here's some other ones we did. LB 163, it's creating the Office of Climate Action. There was a hearing, we did a letter of support. The Natural Resource Committee, I don't think is planning on passing that out this session. We'll see where that's gonna go. LB 271 is provided. It's for an offensive interference with railroad infrastructure. So if you do something, it's adding another enhanced infraction on those kind of things. We'll see where that's gonna go. A lot of times on those kind of bills, they have a harder time passing because it's already illegal to do those kind of things. They're trying to add an extra thing on there, but realistically, it's not gonna deter anybody. People that are gonna do that, they're not gonna be deterred by that. Just how the state kind of looks at them. LB 290, this is relating to grant funding for business park under Economic Recovery Act. We sent a letter on this. It's on select file, so that's gonna be hopefully moving as well. It's about the airport park. Our economic development team has been highly involved in that, especially Brook Aiken, so that's always been a good one too. LB 396, this is a bill that us and the Power Review Board came up with about filing of our public power budgets and audits with the Nebraska Power Review Board. They don't read them, they print them off, they put them on a shelf. So it's kind of alleviating all of our kind of things there. That's gone through final reading. I don't know if it's been signed by the governor yet, but it will be. Next slide, please. These are the ones that are a little bit, we're supporting them, but we need a little bit of work on them. LB 413, this is on rate setting. This is NPPD's bill. Started with a more prescriptive thing on saying it'll be on load size, load factor, length of contract. That language is now going to be changed to, so on the top it says non-discriminatory rates. Now it's going to say not unduly discriminatory. We're not sure if that's going to move right at this. It's got some opposition still, and we're going to work through that to make sure we can see where we are. But as of right now, that bill hasn't moved yet. We'll see where it's going to go. LB 489, this is the making sure that transmission lines are public power, not investor owned. We need some help. We need some to rewrite some of that language in there. It was a little prescriptive, started outright ban. Now there's a somewhat of a test that has to be come in so that investor owned utilities like Black Hills or others could build in the state. That test isn't as robust as we need it to be yet. So we've paused this bill so we can work on it over the interim to make sure we get it right and that the other utilities are comfortable with it. But I want to remind everyone that everything we're doing here is a 2-year process. So if it doesn't pass this year, nothing happens to it this year, we still have next year to do it as well. So still got some time. Same thing with LB 546. This is about us calling the governor to hope get a emergency declaration on something that happens that doesn't involve local damages. We had some issues with this on the ice jams when we had those. We had the hearing, OPPD, it's the only one that testified in support. MUD sent in a letter. It was an interesting hearing. We may call the governor and the governor may declare, and kind of cutting out some of the process on there. We'll figure out where this one's gonna go. The governor's office doesn't like it. NEMA doesn't like it. NEMA had 2 of their representatives testify against it. So it was interesting how we had that. But we've also said on this one, we're gonna wait on this one as well. We're gonna look at the language. NACO, Nebraska Association of County Officials, came up to us afterward wanting to work with us on it. We think we can come to a resolution on this legislatively that appeases 95% of the people on there. And we'll figure out if we need to go forward on it or not. But again, 2-year process on these ones. So these are the more ones that need some more help. Any questions on these ones before we move on?
Seth, I just want to make an observation, maybe by way of understanding. So you talked about 489, my words, not necessarily yours, not being acceptable in its current state, but we listed as a position of support. Is that indicative of the nature of the ebb and flow of things? Like, we're supportive of the overall concept, but now it contains language that is problematic, and we're trying to work through that. Is that an accurate recap?
Yeah, on this bill, we're the ones that brought this issue to the Natural Resource Committee, but it was the Nebraska Power Association as a whole, when there was a transmission line that was built in the northwest corner and nobody really had jurisdiction over that transmission line being built. So we've crafted some language to see what we can do on that. It's kind of progressed as it's going through. The new language that came out was from an investor-owned utility that they want to make it easier. Like, they want to preserve the line that they built, but they also want to make it easier so they can put lines anywhere they want in the state without much public power involvement or oversight through any of the state agencies as well. That's what we're trying to work through now. We still are supportive of it because we're the ones that brought the concept. We think we can get it there to where everybody's about 90% okay with it. We're all gonna have to give a little bit on it, but that's where that one's gonna be too. So that one's gonna take a little bit of time. All right, next slide, please. So these are the ones we're opposing. LB 129, we talked about this one before. It's looking for the future in case Nebraska ever wants to ban ethanol at gas pumps. LB 175, this was about OPPD. It's about successor and interest of a railroad since we own the Arbor line, a little over 56 miles. There was a landowner dispute and it really came down to a banking issue that they wanted to buy the land on the other side. And if you own property on both sides of the rail line, you're required to put in a crossing. Well, they were trying to acquire one so they could have both properties. And we were saying, well, we're figuring out what this is going to be. We offered them a 40-year lease on that till they get it done. But the bank was saying, you have to have a perpetual easement on there. He eventually got the landowner eventually got the funding for that. And now it isn't an issue, but now they're trying to figure out this going forward. For us, what this really does is power utility. It's going to make us act as a railroad when it comes to our rail line and the easements around there versus being more of a public power utility. It's very strict on what you have to do. So we'll see where that's going to go. We were doing it all of it before. We thought the bill was moot, but it might move, it may not. It's not prioritized or anything like that. So right now this bill got out of committee, but it doesn't have really a place to go unless they try to amend it onto a committee priority, which we'll talk about in a second. LB 311, this is just on some telecommunication stuff. We thought there was some language in there that we needed to look at a little bit more in depth. We were able to do that. All the utilities came together. We got language in there. We think we're okay. We didn't think it impacted us too much now, and now it really doesn't impact us. So we'll be going on this. All this is basically coming down to is if you have poles, wires, whatever it is, you control your own stuff. So political subdivisions, utilities, all that kind of stuff. If you own the poles, you own the easement, you get a control kind of what it is. So. Next slide, please. These are the big ones we had here. LB 349 and LB 503. I'm gonna start with just on the energy storage side of things. The hearings on these were a little contentious on certain things. The energy storage bills on here aren't gonna go anywhere right now. On LB 503, first thing they did is they stripped out all the energy storage stuff and just had in the American Energy County designation part. In the Revenue Committee, that was more controversial than the energy storage part. We're gonna have to see how that's gonna go, but a lot of people came out to oppose that part of it. I think there's certain things we can work through, but we may need to take a different look at how we're gonna be doing that as well. LB 349 in the Natural Resource Committee, it's about energy storage. This hearing was contentious as well. We'll see where that's gonna go, but as of right now, both of these bills, I don't see moving this session or probably next. LB 571, this was our cost of living adjustment. We had a hearing on there. We testified in opposition because it's an extra 3% rate increase across the board for doing these kind of things. Not that we love our employees. They're our number one asset. Our retirees are what built us and all that kind of stuff. Our employees have always been our number one thing. The financial side of this is what it really was. And even the bill sponsor, Senator John Kavanaugh, understood that. And he completely understands where we are in this. We did have one of our employees testify on this as well in support. We testified in opposition. It was an interesting hearing. One of each of us on the other side of that. But again, this bill's not gonna advance.
Really quick, if I may, just on the first two, I'll point out here, and your members already know this, but I think for the benefit of the public, LB 349 and 503, lots of good things, not so good things, but this is important for us. It's what we're trying, and we will continue to try, even if these don't move this session. It's how do we work better together as Nebraskans? We all benefit from economic development. We benefit from economic prosperity, jobs, investments, and all of these things need energy, from the Panhandle to the Missouri River. And the pace at which we have been able or haven't been able to build new generation and transmission is a little worrisome. Now, we at OPPD, we've been doing really well. We have mostly satisfied all of our requirements that the board established in SD9. Our portfolio of generation is doing well, but I remain concerned about our ability to continue to build more generation and transmission to enable economic development and economic activity. These type of public discussion and conversation is necessary for everyone in Nebraska or all corners of the state to come together and figure out a solution that works well for rural counties, for farmers, for urban utilities and the likes, all in the benefits of Nebraska. So I'm stating the obvious here, but I think this is super important. And even if we don't see any movement here this year, this is something that needs to be addressed in the long run. If we're going to continue to be open for business and attract the number of businesses that are coming into the state, we are blessed with that. So this is an opportunity for Nebraska to come together and figure out a way to continue to build.
Thanks, Javier. Any other questions about these bills? All right, next slide, please. Here's the other ones we're looking at too. It'll be 169. This is on some sales tax exemptions. There's some of those that we have on there. This is a senator priority, so that could get out there a little bit more. 193, specific conflict changes. We always keep a look on those because most times utilities have an issue with that. There'll be 526 on crypto mining. This bill has been refined down to a little over a page. It's a personal priority for Senator Jacobson. What it comes down to now is that crypto mining has to be on some sort of interruptible or curtailable rate or some kind of policy with the utilities. And then the crypto mining operations have to let us know who they are, and that, because sometimes, if their energy source hasn't been done, we don't know who they are. They have to let us know if they're crypto mining or not. So see where that's gonna go. LB 611 is just on building codes. We always take a keen eye on those. LB 644 is another one. Senator Bostar on foreign adversary issues. It's kind of has a slew of things. It has drones and has other issues on there. That's also been a personal priority for that bill. And then L 660 is on purchasing of drones. You can only purchase drones off the blue list. For us, it says political subdivisions, to the extent practical, political subdivisions may buy off of this list of what it is. The list is a little narrow for some of our issues, so we're hoping that, we testified in the neutral capacity, we're hoping that we can get the same kind of exemption we get on the other ones. I'm saying, as long as you're NERC SIP compliant, we can do whatever we want, because it's about foreign adversary issues that we have going that way. That's a committee priority as well. So we'll see where that's gonna go. The other ones I wanna update you guys are on committee priorities. So there's two transportation telecommunication bills that have been prioritized. They always have two, committees are allowed to. Same thing for natural resources. On those bills, what we're really monitoring now, there's not anything really in there that's too onerous, but since they're committee priorities, you can throw a bunch of stuff in there later on. So you can amend it on general file, select file. Even if it gets the final reading, you can pull it back to select file, put an amendment on it and get it going forward. So we keep a keen eye on those just to make sure that any vehicle moving that could have something that we don't like, we're keeping an eye on it to make sure it doesn't. But if there's something that we can move as well, it's another opportunity for us to amend it on there as well. So those are the bills that we really have on that side of it for that. And I think those are all the state bills we're looking at. Any questions on anything else down in Lincoln?
Seth, I've got a zoom out question, if that's okay. I'm interested in, the committee just got an update on how our customers are faring in terms of paying bills, the extent to which they're getting behind, so that was a topic. And so I was looking at that and reflecting on our role there. And I'm curious about how we think about engaging in any legislation that is aimed at helping the people, our customer owners, be better positioned to pay their bills. And part of the reason I'm asking is because I think in the next slide, you're going to talk about LIHEAP, as a potentially thing at risk. So I think it's just going to continue to get harder and harder for our customers. And I don't have any bill in mind. There's not anything that I'm interested in pointing you to. I'm just curious about the way in which the district thinks about, beyond the wires and, the technical aspects of our work. If we put our customer owners at the center of it, how we think about engaging in any of those conversations.
Well, I'll say, I always have, in government relations, I think everyone always has our customer owners in mind when any of this stuff comes up.
Sure.
I mean, when we, just going to your LIHEAP issue, one of the very first bills I helped through this when I took over the state issues was a bill to expand the eligibility for LIHEAP in the state. And it was a pretty tough slog. The governor vetoed the bill and we were able to override it. Beyond everyone's objections and telling us not to do it, we were still able to do that. Because our customers are our most important asset that we have. And we'll always look at anything like that going forward. We've always looked at those kind of things to make sure that our customers are taken care of the best. Because just from our three pillars, affordability, reliability, and environmental services, affordability is one of those things we always keep a keen eye on, because that's kind of the hallmark of public power now, because our rates are always so much lower than our colleagues in the investor-owned utility world, because we don't put in that rate of return like they do, and because our services are just cost-based and there's nothing else on there. So yes, everything we've always looked at those kind of things to see where we can go for sure. Yes.
I guess I'll ask regarding LB 413, change provisions relating to the setting of rates by certain power districts. And you mentioned that changing the phrase from non-discriminatory to not unduly discriminatory. Does that have any relevance to rate setting for OPPD?
It will, and it's right now, I think, and Steve or Brad or someone can jump in here too. Not unduly discriminatory is how FERC and SPP kind of look at it as well. So it's harmonizing that as well, but then just making sure that it gives utilities a little bit more flexibility on some of these issues. So that's kind of where we're looking at that side of it.
I would say that the current standard has worked very well for OPPD. We're comfortable with it. And as a practical matter, this change, yes, I think it may you know, in the minds of some, provide more flexibility. But we were really fine either way, which is why OPPD is taking the position that it is taking on this bill.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Quickly, I think that the role that we play is important. There are three main issues. One is we need more money to help those who cannot pay. That money historically has only come from the federal government, and a small portion of that is come from our volunteers on the energy assistance program. The other source, there are two sources I can think of. One is the state, which is not in a good position today to grant any money, or the other one is our other customers. Someone has to foot that bill, and I think this is where we're trying to do best we can, especially at the federal level and the state level, to try to get as many funds back into our service territory as we can. But the other piece that's super important is the role that we play, maybe not immediately, but the role that we play in economic development. To the extent that we continue to invest and allow companies to come in and set roots in Nebraska, those are jobs, in many cases well-paying jobs. And that's a big role that we play in, and as the economic engine of the region, is to bring those jobs into Nebraska. And it's our own customer owners who get those jobs and help address these issues. It's a much longer time horizon, but that's an important piece where we play a role.
Here, I might add a note, and also in response, one of the other elements that we're confident can have an impact is, you'll recall, our customer engagement and resource adequacy, right? In products and services geared to help our customers as they adopt them, reduce their energy usage. So while rate increases will have an impact in their cents per kilowatt hour they're paying, our aim, with a focus on ensuring we get adoption of those products and services, moderate income customers who often for whom energy is a bigger burden, that they can offset and use that as an opportunity to reduce some of the raw dollars out the door for energy bills. And that's an intense focus as well. That's another part of the puzzle, we believe, to help those customers that need help the most.
Yeah. All of that's good. I'm not going to push on it. I would just simply say, you know, you named low and moderate income folks. Like, there are different levers to pull, right? And what can we do to get them not be low and moderate income is the only thing that I'm just kind of curious about. And again, I'm not going to push on it. I know that this is complex, trying to figure out exactly where we need to leverage the weight that we have. But it's like, I'm trying to take a more systems view of the way in which we're approaching this. And again, a question, I'm not advocating for anything in particular. I was just kind of curious about how we're showing up in that space. So thank you.
And then we'll throw in weatherization in there as well. So
Yeah.
that's the way we could do that. Well, we skip down to the federal slides. The last slide we have, since button up on a little over the time. These are the four things we've really been keying on up here. So we have executive orders. I did a slew of things. They've done everything. Courts have weighed in. There's been staff cuts. They're hiring all the probationary staff back. All this really comes down to is delays. Everything's going to be delayed because that's what this does. And when you delay things, a lot of times it makes it harder for everyone to do it. On reconciliation, they're still talking about this. Tax exempt financing is going to be one of our top priorities out there, making sure that that is preserved, making sure, you know, the border adjustment tax has been on there. This just makes all the stuff that we buy more expensive. And then the IRA, IIJA, making sure that we're defending that as best we can to make sure that that's not in there on certain things. There are going to be certain things that will come out of there, but we're trying to mitigate as much as we can and preserve as much as we can on that to make sure that that's going to be where that is. The main one on that we keep hearing is the EV issues. I think if anything's going to be in there from those, it's probably going to be the EV issues. If not, and hopefully nothing gets in there, but that's where they're kind of coming down on that. LIHEAP funding, as we said before, we've been out advocating for that every year. We will continue to do that as well. And the next big one are the tariffs and how those go. You know, they implement a tariff, we implement one, the other side implements one, we delay it. Again, all this is doing is just increasing costs for some of the stuff that we have coming in. So we're keeping a key eye on those kind of things to see how that's going to impact the district and how we can do our best to inform people about it. So those are the big federal things that are going on. Anything else on the federal side you guys have any questions about? Please let me know. I think that's our last slide, so.
Just quickly, and the one that's not in here, it's the immigration activities. Clearly, there's lots of data behind this on the role that immigrants play in construction and services industries, especially home constructions, house constructions and services. So that's going to be an interesting one here from our perspective, and the number of homes and meters we're installing, et cetera, that we're keeping a close eye on the ripple effects of that may slow down or accelerate at different points in time based on federal activity. It affects our operations on how fast are we moving or how slow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seth?
Okay, so we have customer growth update.
Thanks.
Back to you, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. I did a poor job of delegating today, so you get me. I'm Tim McRae, the Vice President of Customer Service and Public Affairs. This will be a brief discussion with only a couple of slides, but there's a couple of key takeaways that I want to offer the board and any of the public that are watching. One is that as you've heard OPPD talk about load growth over the last few years, that is continuing, and I'll share some stats with you to prove that out a bit. And I wanted to be established and confirm that OPPD is serving the overwhelming majority of that growth. We'll talk about a few exceptions of extraordinarily large requests that we have to be a bit more diligent about, but we are answering the call and serving that customer growth. So Aaron, we can go forward to the first slide. There are a few stats that would confirm that load growth is continuing. Just last year, we installed and added over 11,000 meters. That is consistent with the previous couple of years, right around 11 to 12,000, but up from historically, say pre-pandemic, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 a year. So that's one sign that load growth is certainly upon us. We see a number, there's one cited on the screen, but a number of indicators about the quality of life and the quality of economic development in Nebraska and in our service territory. That certainly is a contributor. And a couple of other stats we have continued to set over the last few years. Peak loads in both winter and summer, that has been significant. That's another indicator of growth. And we're planning in 25 for about a 12.5% increase in megawatt hour of usage over last year. That's at a retail, 16.5% retail revenue growth for 2025 as well. All indicators that the growth we've been talking about is occurring and continuing. Now, where's that growth been coming from? It's been coming from a number of areas and really across the entire sector. Certainly new manufacturing and industrial projects. It's been coming from certainly data center requests, including those powered by and seeking to power artificial intelligence. That's certainly not one we can overlook. We're also seeing it through electrification of transportation and buildings. Amazon, for example, what very well known. Many of you get Amazon deliveries, and they have electric delivery vans that cover the bulk of the city. That's one example. There are other customers that are looking at other systems, possible conversion from other sources of energy over to electricity. So that's another source of growth. We're seeing continued investments to prepare for growth from a state and local and regional economic development perspective. An example, we've had at a local and state level, $130+ million of investment in legislation passed in the last couple of years to fuel economic growth. That includes 3 inland port districts, an airport business park, and LB 644. There was a bill to plan and develop sites for economic development. And among all of that, and we are serving the overwhelming majority of that, labor, energy, and speed to market can continue to be challenges for some of the economic development, in particular, some of the largest from an electrical infrastructure and or from a land use or a labor use as well. Those are all can be constraints. Overall, we are fielding requests and inquiries for thousands of megawatts of load growth, not simply to come and consume electricity, but from customers or locations that want to expand or locate here. Aaron, you can go forward to the next slide. So how are we handling that? Well, we are working in no particular order. We are working to closely match load growth to capacity and infrastructure availability. So that does a few things. We want to have, for all of our existing customers, we want to have predictability of when load growth will come on. So we can, as best as possible, match our investment in infrastructure to when that new load will come on and the new revenue that will pay for that infrastructure. So we're working very hard there. We are working to bring increased certainty and predictability, both from our customers and the expanding projects back to our organization. We're working very hard to continually check in and translate the expected timelines, size of growth, et cetera. That is then in turn informing our ability to go back to those customers, back to those projects, and try to give a bit more certainty of when we'd be able to serve them. The vast majority, it is green light. They go, be that housing developments, commercial developments, you name it. It is only those with extraordinarily large load requests that we're having to work with more specifically on the timing. We're taking a pragmatic approach as we engage and support the communities. We operate in an ecosystem of customer support and economic development. So we're engaged with all the local, regional economic development offices, the state economic development office, and we continue to work in close concert with them to make sure that we're serving and supporting economic and residential growth in the area. We are not to be overlooked. We're also engaging and partnering with customers on initiatives to save energy consumption. So while we're growing, we are also working with customers, small to large, on energy saving and energy efficiency techniques. That could range from a group we have in our large commercial and industrial group that work with our largest customers on energy efficiency projects. That could be building control systems. It could be lighting projects, could be a number of things, down to and including residential customers that we offer products and services that can help them better manage their electric usage and reduce it to save money, and it saves capacity for us. And we are continuing to provide education and involve key stakeholders. One of the things that, from Javier to myself to all of us that face externally and customers and the public, have been working to educate on the complexity of serving this growth, all the way from infrastructure challenges and supply chain challenges to the challenges of interconnection, the timelines of adding significant generation resources. All of those things have been a constant state of education, and anecdotally, I would say, has really helped educate our customers, the public and public officials, about what we're navigating in terms of growth. So 2 brief slides, wanted to offer those 2 takeaways: that the load growth we've been talking about is continuing. We expect it to continue, and OPPD has been serving the call for those customers. Happy to field any questions that anyone has. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
With that, CPE committee list.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break for lunch. We'll be back at 5 after 12. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We're going to start off with Director Moody and the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Chair Core. The Finance Committee met on March 7th. You see the agenda in front of you. As it relates to the topics that we're going to talk about here, the covering later on our agenda, items number 5, 6, and 7. So I won't go into those. And item number 4, will get covered as part of the Systems Management Nuclear Oversight Committee report and action items. As such, the only thing that leaves for my chair report is item number 3. As some of you may recall, the board approved a FERC transmission tariff filing to be consistent with FERC's 898 ruling in September of 2024. So that was not too long ago. And that order created line item detail for renewable resources. After that filing was made, FERC subsequently asked for additional details to be included in its template filing, specifically putting energy storage into its own line item. So to appropriately resolve that, and after consultation with FERC, OPPD withdrew its rate filing and agreed to refile in early 2025. So that's coming up. With FERC's requested minor change to provide that line item detail for energy storage. So we'll be working with the FERC rate consultant to make minor requested changes, and its revised filing will be made by its external rates counsel before the end of the month. So a little bit of tidying up and not a whole lot more. The committee was appreciative to get an update from the team on that. OPPD will request this template to coincide with its 26-27 FERC annual rate submission. Beyond that, everything is either pre-month committee action items, board work plan, summary of meetings, so on and so forth. So unless anyone else on the committee has anything else to add, we can keep going. We are on to new retirement fund investment managers. I think we've got Mr. Herbert right there.
And I will turn it over to Mr. Petrulis to talk about our recommended new retirement fund managers. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Good afternoon. I'm John Petrulis. I manage our treasury debt and investments area. And today we're going to go over two different retirement fund board items. It's a recommendation to replace managers in two different disciplines. So the first one is the Trust Selection Committee of over the retirement plan recommends replacing our mid-cap equity manager, Wellington. And Wellington was put on watch in September of 2023. And as of, they were on watch for a year. So as of September of 2024, they had not met the retention criteria. Essentially, the retention criteria is they have to beat the market net of fee. I'm sorry, beat the index net of fees, and then also be in the top 40th percentile of Siegel Martin, who's our investment advisor, be in the top 40th percentile of their manager universe. And since Wellington did not meet these, the Trust Selection Committee asked Siegel to make a recommendation for new investment managers. So the Trust Selection Committee looked at 3 different managers that were recommended by Siegel, and then they chose to interview two of these managers. And after having the review of these 2 managers and the interviews, the Trust Selection Committee is making the recommendation to hire Kane Anderson as the new mid-cap equity manager. When we look at these managers, a lot of things go into play. We look at fees, we look at performance, we look at risk, all these types of things. And these are recommended managers from Siegel. So ultimately, Kane Anderson is the recommendation to the board, and we will be asking for the board to appoint Kane Anderson as an investment manager in the retirement plan. You go to the second one then. So the Trust Selection Committee is also recommending the replacement of the 2 emerging market equity managers. These are Invesco and Allspring. Allspring was put on the not recommended list by Siegel in late, 2024. And so therefore, whenever anybody's put on a not recommended list, we want to replace that. We'll go to replace that particular manager. The second one, Invesco, is they are also not meeting the retention criteria. So they haven't performed well. They haven't meeting the market net of the index net of fees. And they also have been in the bottom portion of Siegel's universe of managers. So Siegel recommended 5 different managers for this particular discipline. And the reason why that is because we looked at an index. So we looked at 3 active managers We looked at an index, and then Siegel also proposed a hybrid that essentially had two different managers, but this was a single run. It was a single run investment. And so we decided against that because we didn't want to have any thought that that Siegel was overlapping their investment consulting with the recommendation of actually also managing funds. They wouldn't have gotten any fees or anything from this, but it was an optics thing. So we decided to exclude them. We did interview all three. We interviewed three of the managers. And after interviewing them, we are making the recommendation that Acadian be hired so we are recommending replacing both Invesco and Allspring with Acadian. And so that's a recommendation. And this is from Siegel. Siegel didn't think that there was any value of having two different investment managers. At one time, maybe there was more of a difference between the two emerging market equity managers. One of them was maybe more growth oriented and one of them was more value oriented. But over time, this didn't really lead to be true. So their recommendation is just to replace both with one manager. So with that, we would ask the board to approve Acadian as a new investment manager in the retirement plan. With that, I'd open it up for any questions.
So colleagues, the recommendation letters that summarize the process from Siegel Marco are due diligent for your review. So if you're curious about what the process was and how things work, please review those. Beyond that, any other questions for?
Did anyone from the finance committee participate in the interviews?
It came up quick. I couldn't make it. I don't recall if any of the other committee members were there.
No, unfortunately, nobody from the finance committee was able to attend.
How many total managers? You're supposed to replacing 3.
I'd say about 15, John. I don't know if
That's about right, John.
it's right about 15. So.
And how common, I mean, to that question for more context, how commonly is this something that happened? Can we expect this to happen on a regular annual basis where we're seeing a couple turnover here or there, or are there longer periods where we've got more stability?
Yeah, there's been periods where there's been hardly any turnover. Unfortunately, in the last few years, there's been a bit of turnover. We don't have anybody on watch as of right now. So we had one investment manager was Stone Harbor, our emerging market debt manager, and they actually worked their way off of watch. So they performed well. They were on watch. We've been on watch for a year, and they've worked their way off it as of essentially the end of 2024. So it can't come up. We do look at it. We do try to look at all managers over a long-term horizon. We don't just look at just the 1 year. We try to go 3 years and 5 years. 1 year can make a big difference, make a big swing in some of these numbers. So we don't want to overreact, but that's why we generally give them 1 year watch period.
What kind of costs are there in changing managers?
There's really no significant costs, I guess. We look at all managers based on fees. So these managers that we are recommending they're at either the median or below the median. And generally they're below the median in cost for a manager of that different type. So different managers cost different amounts just based upon what they have to do and that. But we do look at a net of fees. So there'll be no cost that's involved in as far as we'll just transition it. I mean, there's some legal costs, review time and things like that. Oh, nothing significant.
So the board does have responsibility for approving these, so we will see this on the agenda for Thursday. It's an action item for us. Any further questions? Okay.
Thank you.
The next item up is an updated authorization for debt financing for this year. And here comes Mr. Thurmans.
Thank you, Director Moody. Yes, we're asking the board to increase our authorization to issue debt for 2025. As we showed here for about this time last year, the district asked for an authorization to issue $1.4 billion worth of debt through the end of this year. So it was a 2-year authorization based on the best information we had available at that time. And as of the end of last year, we actually issued $980 million worth of debt. So almost $1 billion, and we've got about 420 million left of authorization. We knew pretty quickly, we put to the next slide, that 420 was not going to be adequate. At the time of the corporate operating plan, we needed new money issuance of 460 million, and that didn't take into account any refunding opportunities. So we knew that we needed to increase the authorization in 2025. And there's really a few reasons for that. I think everybody is aware in 2024, we ended up having capital projects that were accelerated into 2024. We also had periods of time where we had to spend more money than we had planned. When we had storms come through, even though that money's FEMA is compensating us for a lot of the storm costs, that's a liquidity at risk. We are spending money to help fund that, and that's less money that goes then for capital construction. And then in 2024, good news is that we actually refunded what we call Build America bonds. They were taxable bonds that we issued in 2010. We had not expected to actually be able to refund those. And we were able to do that. There was a court case that came out that allowed us to actually refund these taxable bonds. We took advantage of that mid-year. That was over $100 million that we weren't expecting to do. And then I believe everyone's aware that we did, as we were going through the new generation plan, that the cost of that is more than what we had originally expected, both last year at this time and then when we went forward with the corporate operating plan last fall. And then the last piece that I want to mention is we're going to be asking the authority, and you see there, to go up to 2 billion, from 1.4 to 2 billion. That's 600 million more. One other piece we're going to be looking potentially to use is to potentially borrow the interest on the debt until the new generation projects that we're financing are operational. That allows us to delay the debt service on the debt until we get revenue from the new generation projects. This is I would say, a very common process that the industry does when you have generation projects. You try to avoid the debt service on those generation projects until the revenue comes in from them. And when we did NC2's financing back in the 2005 to 2009 timeframe, we just did something very similar for the NC2 participants, where we call that funded interest. You borrow the interest. And when you do that, obviously your borrowing goes up because your proceeds have to cover the interest payments to bondholders until the plan is operational. And we're looking at that. We haven't made a final decision on whether we're going to use that, but the authority to up to $2 billion allows us that option to use funded interest for our bonds. So that is what we're asking for. We're asking to increase our authority from 1.4 billion to 2 billion. That allows us to issue approximately $1 billion worth of debt in 2025. That would be for new money purposes and for refundings. We still have refundings available that we think we can take advantage of, and obviously those are important. We can refund at higher yielding debt and with lower yielding or lower coupon debt that reduces our debt service going forward. So as we mentioned last year, the ability to actually give us this authority now, as opposed to the date when we actually issue the debt, it allows us to take advantage of market conditions when it's right to go to the marketplace. And as I mentioned, we're going to use this to reimburse or fund new capital projects and to refund debt. And so one question that came up under the Finance Committee is, what does this mean for our metrics going forward? We will maintain 2.0 times coverage going forward, even with this additional debt issuance, and our debt to equity ratio or debt to capitalization ratio will be below 70%, which is a metric we like to see going forward also. So we have looked at that, and we believe that we can maintain the metrics we need to be a AA rated utility, even with this additional debt that we're asking for the board to give us the authority to issue. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Obviously, we're issuing a lot of debt. As you've seen earlier, we have a lot of generation going on, and so this is the consequence of our generation and capital needs going forward. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
John, one quick question.
Yeah.
Refunding notwithstanding on the new money. Do we finance part of our capital with cash?
Absolutely. We finance over $200 million every year in cash. That's the additional, the 2 times coverage, that additional debt service coverage we generate in cash that goes to finance our capital program. So that's, right now, that's over $200 million that we're financing every year with cash.
So you
Brandon
mentioned,
Williams.
yeah, you mentioned about the interest on the projects that will be completed. Which projects specifically are you referring to there?
The new turbine projects that we have at Turtle Creek and Cass County, and then also the conversion of fuel oil at Cass County. Those projects in particular.
Thanks.
Yep.
John, we saw earlier today when we reviewed SD1 that the debt service coverage ratio was 1.9, and we'll get into that more on the next topic here in a moment. But if you could connect some dots for us just briefly.
Yeah.
You're projecting that it's going to maintain 2.0, but it's a little bit below that right now. Help us understand.
Well, last year it ended up, we did actually fall a little below that. We'll talk about that when I'll ask Laura to come in and talk about the finances. But going forward, we always set our rates to generate 2 times coverage. And so we'll generate rates to keep our 2 times coverage going forward. So that is our plan. We have no plans to change that going forward.
Okay. And then the debt to capitalization ratio staying below 70. Talk to us a little bit about what the target is. What is there a ceiling that we need to be mindful of? Is that what that 70 is?
Well, I'd like to see us not exceed 70%. If you look at where we're at right now, which is right at 65%, this will increase that some if we issue another, $800 to $1 million worth of debt this year. But when you look at the future debt issuances that we have in place, and roughly right now, it's looking at somewhere between $600 and $700 million a year of future debt issuances in the next couple of years. Even with that, we think we can be below 70% debt to capitalization. That's an item that the rating agencies look at also, in addition to the debt service coverage.
It's important. You're issuing debt to build assets. Right. Is our infrastructure, our asset base, our net utilities plan growing commensurately with the debt that we're issuing? And I think that's just a measure of health. So you're not getting indebted for things that don't generate value. My expectation is, of course, we're pushing these up, and we've been building that capacity for years. Right? There were many years when we didn't issue new money debt service, and now we're expanding and we're doing that. My expectation, I'm just talking to my colleagues in the industry, is following. So I assume that rating agencies are gonna be very busy analyzing not only all of us individually as credits, but the industry as a whole. Say what changes may they propose going forward, just to acknowledge the growth stage that we're in, that we really haven't seen in decades. But it's important for us to always look at those healthy financial metrics so that we can access the market at low interest rates. And all of these metrics, if for whatever reason we were not able to meet these metrics, it means that we can still access the market. We'll probably access with lower ratings at higher interest rates.
I might, oh, sorry.
Go.
I might just, there's a number of different angles to kind of look at this challenge with. There's a lot of generation that we're bringing on that does not require debt. So for us, it's a balancing act on where do we partner, where do we own.
Demand response is not a debt issuance aspect. And so we've been able to kind of optimize the totality of criteria as we've gone down the road, and we'll continue to do that.
Our renewal portfolio, right? That's, we're paying for that, but it's not capital intensive for us. We will pay for that as we're taking those elections.
So PPAs are not debt.
No.
And we've been fortunate, we have a number of, as you know, PPA agreements that don't impact these ratios at all.
To your point, accessing our bond ratings today are
AA,
double A.
with a stable outlook. And that's our intention is to continue those AA ratings.
So to review, we approved 1.4 about this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier. You've used roughly
About $1 billion, a little less than $1 billion.
And this is a request for another 600 million, getting the total up to 2 million through the end of the year, which leaves you $1 billion roughly left
Right.
for the remainder of the year. Okay, yeah.
So I remember last time we did this, I think we were talking about it being a 2-year authorization, roughly twice what we had done in the past. And now I heard you say that we are anticipating something like 600 or 700 million per year each year moving forward. So last year we doubled up essentially, and we anticipate additional authorization recommendations in the future on about the same magnitude as what we're seeing now. So last year was just maybe not actually 2 years, but it just was a bump in debt authorization. Is that?
Yeah, I would say that we're certainly managing our debt issuance going forward and trying to really look at what we're spending and what we can borrow and what we can pay cash on. And so those numbers I gave you, those are really rough estimates going forward. I think someone had asked for that information. And so I wanted to at least give you that indication. But at this time next year, I would expect that we'll ask for authorization for 2026 and possibly 27. It's always a little difficult when you ask for 2 years because then you sometimes have to come back and ask for more. So we may end up with just an annual authorization going forward.
And then you mentioned that 70% target on the debt ratio. The SD3 monitoring report from last year had a 6-year backtrack on where we had been in the past, back to 57% in 2020. So as we project forward, we anticipate being under the 70% target with this authorization, and we also anticipate remaining under the 70% target with successive debt authorization requests in the future to maintain both 2.0 and 70%. That is
our intention. That is our intention.
We'll actively manage that.
Great questions. Other questions, colleagues?
I would just add, don't be surprised. We will be asking for additional debt authorization later this year, not tied to any OPPD bonds that our customers pay for. They're the NC2 separate system bonds that we've issued on behalf of the 7 participants of NC2. We have refunding opportunities for them. And it's our responsibility when the market is right to refund those bonds with lower coupon debt, even though the district doesn't get any benefit from doing that directly. And so later this year, we'll come back for a NC2 separate system debt authorization.
It's a good heads up. Thank you, John. Okay. I think we're good there. Thank you very much, Mr. Thurber. We've hinted at this, so let's now get into the next agenda topic, the financial review of our 2024 figures. It's closed and we're ready to see the end result.
Even though I'm listed there, I've asked Laura Langford, our Director of Corporate Accounting and Controller, to speak on the 2024 financial report.
Okay, all right, thanks, John. Good afternoon. We're going to go over just kind of a high level of where we ended 2024 from a financial perspective. This is just a reporting item. I was also mentioned we do have a meeting scheduled for Thursday with the Risk Committee, and that'll be the final presentation of the annual report that's been provided to the Risk Committee. That's a very in-depth look at the year. And then our auditors board also will present the results of the audit. So we can go to the next page. All right, so overall, 2024 was a bit of a financially challenging year. We've already talked about us being at 1.9 for our debt service coverage. If we look at just a summary of the year, we did have higher costs with the numerous storms that we encountered. We had higher production expenses with some generation outages. And then for most of the year, the weather was pretty mild. So we saw lower than expected retail revenue. So we are at 1.9. I know that was discussed by John and also this morning on SD1 discussion. We do anticipate that we will be at 2.0 times next year. And as Brad said, that is something that we are actively managing towards. In spite of that, we think we are still in a good position. All right, so we're going to dig into these areas just a little bit more in detail. We'll start in the upper left with retail revenue. Year to date, we were over budget about $7.5 million. That is after the use of the rate stabilization reserve. So we did, based on the results, we used 13.3 million of the rate stabilization reserve. So that did put us over budget. But before that, we were behind budget for retail sales. With that mild weather that I mentioned, both residential and commercial were under budget. We were a little over budget on the industrial side, but overall for the year, retail was under budget. So once we had that boost of the rate stabilization usage, that did put us over budget. And Aaron, if we could go forward for just a moment. I just wanted to mention, when I meet with you quarterly, the first two pages look pretty similar, but at the end of the year, we have an additional page here, and I'm not going to spend time going through this, but just wanted to point it out to make sure that you knew it was here. This goes into a little bit more detail on our retail revenue, breaking it down by the three large classes, both from a revenue standpoint and a usage standpoint. Gives you what we had for the year compared to last year and the budget. So just want to point that out there. We won't spend time going through it, but you can see where those variances are showing up year over year and then from the budget perspective. All right, we can go back up, Aaron. All right, so then moving down to off-system revenue. Off-system revenue, we were over budget about $57 million. That's due to additional congestion hedging revenue that we received from SPP. That's pretty consistent the last several years. We've been receiving more congestion hedging revenue. That does fortunately help us offset some of our purchase power costs. So moving over to the right, fuel and purchase power expense, that kind of helps us round out our net power costs. Here we were over budget for the year, about $63 million. The bulk of that is from purchase power expense. We just had higher volumes of what we were purchasing as we had lower generation overall from our fleet this year. With that lower generation, that did bring fuel expense down. So those two offset each other, but in the end, we ended up being over budget in that category as well. As we move up to the right for O&M expense, and this is excluding fuel and purchase power, here we were over budget about $15.5 million. This is a category I want to focus a little bit more on. As I talked to you the last several quarters in particular, we talked about being over budget in this area because of distribution expense. And you can really see that in the third quarter. Although you can see in the fourth quarter, we are lower. And that is due to the regulatory accounting that the board approved in October for us to allow us to defer recognizing the expenses from the storm to match up the revenue later with the expenses, and we receive that grant revenue from FEMA. So you see that in the fourth quarter, we removed that. That helped our budget position for sure, but we will see those expenses show up likely starting this year as we have that grant revenue to recognize. So we end up being over budget, only about $15 million in that category. Part of that was due to higher production expenses with the generation outages that I mentioned. And then we were also over in our administrative and general expense category, and that was from higher salary costs. And that doesn't mean paying employees more, but the timing of when we plan in the budget when positions will be filled, that timing was different. We hired employees sooner, so over budget position. And we also had then a higher allocation for our payroll accrual costs to that category. And then to finish out this page, on the bottom, we have other income and other expense. From an other income perspective on the left, we were over budget here, about $32 million. This is two areas. One is higher investment income from higher market rates, and you can really see that in the third quarter. We also had higher revenue from allowance for funds used during construction, or AFUDC, and that's just we had those higher construction balances that contributed to that balance being higher. And then moving over to the left, other expense, almost pretty spot on to budget, about a $2 million variance. Had some higher depreciation amortization expense from additional IT contracts. And then that was offset some with some lower interest expense just due to the timing of when we issued bonds. Any questions on this page before we move to the next page?
Talk about the delay of expenses related to the storm to next year, to this year. Yes.
This year.
So that it could match up with FEMA grant, and perhaps slight detour, but do we have any concern about FEMA's ability and willingness to deliver on the funds grant? I'm just mindful of broad cost cutting at a federal level, and I'm curious if that's.
Not to our knowledge.
Okay.
And all of the storms,
Ask me again tomorrow morning.
Yeah, no, yeah, fair enough.
all of the storms from 2024 were declared, signed off by FEMA, so those have been declared. Now, the timing of when we can recognize the revenue to when we get the cash, that's always been a time difference, even before current political environment. But yeah, at this point, we don't know of anything. We haven't had any indications from our FEMA representatives.
Thank you.
So. All right, I'm going to move to the next page. All right, so on the left-hand side, we have operating income and net income. From an operating income perspective, we are 13 million under budget. That again is related to those factors I just talked about in the page before, that overall our operating expenses were over budget, and they were more over budget than our operating revenue was over budget. So that gave us a negative position related to the budget on operating income. When you move down though to net income, here we're over budget about $17 million. And that's because we're seeing the effect there of the investment income coming in and AFUDC that's kind of helping offset that operating income. And then on the right-hand side, we have our cash balance and capital spending. From a cash perspective, we were higher at the end of the year from a cash perspective compared to budget, and that's just due to the timing of the bond issuances. We issued bonds a little bit later than we had initially anticipated in the budget. And then on capital spending, we ended the year over budget, almost $19 million. And that is related to the additional combustion turbines we purchased for Turtle Creek and Cass County early in 2024. And then lastly on this page, the SD impact, SD2 on rates. We have two comparisons here. One is on the defined regional average. That is compared to final EIA data, and we're at 15.8% below the regional average. And then we also have included on here the national average, and that's what we include in the annual report. That is based on preliminary EIA information, and we are at 30.4% below the national average. And then on SD3, the debt service coverage, we've talked about that. We're at 1.9 times. That again is compared to our target of 2.0 times, and we'll be really watching that very closely this year to ensure that we achieve that. And then from a liquidity standpoint, we do continue to have strong liquidity. At the end of the year, we had 254 days of cash on hand, and that's compared to our minimum of 100 days. So in a good liquidity position there. That, are there any other questions?
Well, I think the Finance Committee in February got a pretty good deep look into the preliminary results, and that's the time at which I recall us getting an opportunity to understand how we arrived at a 1.9 figure, which was not where we were when we were doing the COP, right?
Correct.
So help us understand, and I want to make sure the full board understands what changed as we kind of got to the end of the year to put us in that spot.
Yeah. So when we looked at the corporate operating plan, it was the 9 months actual plus 3 of forecast, and we were projecting that we would need 13.3 million out of the rate stabilization to meet 2 times coverage, which is what we ended up using. But then as we continued on throughout the rest of the year, we experienced some higher generation expense, and that was due to some outages we experienced in that time frame. And also weather continued to be mild for us, and so we weren't seeing retail revenues show up the same. So that accounted for that difference. I think it was about another 16.3 million is what we would have needed to bring us to the full 2 times debt service coverage. And so as a team.
Can you go to the next slide?
As a team, we had discussed what that would mean and what rate pressure that might put on future years if we were to take down the rate stabilization reserve even higher.
I want to highlight this. So if you look at the graphs on the right, residential, commercial, industrial, sure. Big increases from 2023 into 2024, even surpassing budget for 2024. New construction, new machines, new lines, taking more energy. But it's really interesting when you see the residential and commercial, especially the residential piece. It was a super mild year. And it's weird to say that because it was really dramatic when it came to storms. We got hit a ton of storms, but everything in between was mild, very mild weather, mild winter and summer temperatures. So that made our customer owners use significantly less energy than what we were projecting. And I think that's, as of September, when we snapped the line, so to speak, for the COP, we knew that we were already under collecting revenue for the year compared to budget. all for good reasons. People were using less energy. What we did not expect was for the October, November, December to continue that trend and even more mild weather, and that resulted in significantly less revenue than anticipated. What we chose, and Jeff Bishop and I had many conversations around these, was the board in December approved a rate increase that covered two aspects. One is the growth we needed for 2025, but also recovering costs that we incurred in 2024. There were additional costs that were incurred in 2024 that we chose not to put in the rate increase. And we also chose not to take those out of the rate stabilization fund. Because when we do that, that would have to be recovered through rates. So rather, we chose the other alternative, which was, let's go through the year with a 1.9 times that service coverage. Again, not ideal, not something we want to do year after year, but it was a good compromise balancing some of the costs covered through rates and the other costs not recovered through rates, ending the year with a 1.9 times coverage. But that means that this year we were super focused to make sure that we bring that debt service coverage back up to 2 times.
Yeah. Thank you for walking through that. That's super helpful. I don't have any further questions, colleagues. Any other questions?
Because if we have another mild year this year, a couple mild years in a row, does that then exacerbate the challenge, which would require additional debt?
Yeah, it's always possible. Maybe just a brief process comment. When we forecast weather, we use a 15-year normalized average. And so we take that duration into the load forecasting process. The weather in particular affects the residential and commercial classes pretty significantly, as Javier noted. One of the things we're doing this year is, as we talk about the potential to have 2 consecutive years, what are those cost-saving levers that we might pursue as an organization to prepare in the event that that occurs? And so we've been having some of those conversations internally from a preparedness perspective to make sure that as we progress through the year, we're making the decisions in a linear way to make sure we don't get an outcome we don't want at the end of the year. So we've been having a lot of those conversations.
And the finance committee is, will, as you might imagine, be interested in how that progresses throughout the course of the year.
Point of clarification, and this is important. When we issue debt, the type of debt that John Thurber just mentioned, that's for capital projects. We never finance operations with debt. Except for liquidity purposes, we do have a commercial paper program. It allows us to take advantage of interest rate environments within the same year, just to make sure that, changes in weather conditions that results in lower revenues, that's something that we never finance with debt, long-term debt. I may be stating the obvious.
Fair to say the tool that we use to kind of even things out is the rate stabilization.
Rate stabilization or the service coverage, reserves, but that's always within the year.
Yeah. Okay, good conversation. Other questions, comments? Okay, thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
I believe the finance committee rests. Chair Cooper.
All right, thank you. Director Williams?
Great. The Systems Management and Nuclear Oversight Committee did meet on March 3rd. Yeah, we've got the agenda on the screen right now.
Take care.
We got an update about advanced metering infrastructure. Again, we've talked about this a lot recently. There's a lot of work ongoing, so appreciate the additional technical information. I think we've mentioned in the past that we are anticipating more technical information to be provided to the Systems Committee and more public-facing information to be provided to the Customer Public Engagement Committee. So this was the more technical aspect of how AMI is proceeding, and that was very helpful. So thanks to the team who presented that. We discussed FERC Order 719 resolution, which will be on the agenda here in just a little bit. So we'll get to that. We talked about cold weather readiness and some of the work that district has been undertaking in order to be prepared for the increasing frequency of extreme cold weather events, and specifically what we have done in the past and how we will be more ready in the future. And then we look forward to future work plan items. So With that, I think the first item we'll be discussing today was not covered in the pre-committee meeting. For the agenda today, we have the Nuclear Oversight Committee quarterly report, and looks like Tim Ewing.
Pictures.
Good afternoon, Tim Ewing, Senior Director of Fort Calhoun Decommissioning. If we can go to the first picture, we'll talk through the report. So this represents a huge milestone for us. This is the inside of containment just before the end of the year. As you can see, all the equipment that was in there, all the structures, the columns, the floors, that material is all removed. The vast majority of it has also been disposed of. So huge milestone to achieve. Right now, we're working on what I'll term the fine cleaning of the inside of containment so that it can be prepared for the demolition phase that will come up later this year. Outside of containment, we're doing the radiological surveys necessary to backfill that area so that we can take down containment. So those two things go together. There have been some challenges with those surveys on the outside from a timing standpoint. I'll talk about that a little bit more when we up the schedule at the end. Next slide, please. So other than the work inside containment and around it from a survey standpoint, we've been taking down some of our support structures. This is the security building. The two pictures on the left kind of give you an in-process view. And then the picture on the right is what it looks like right now. Now those trenches where the footers are, those will get backfilled, but we have to complete our surveys first before we do that. Next slide, please. And kind of a similar setup here. This is a support structure that we used for storage of large components for a period of time. The two pictures on the left kind of give you the in progress. And the picture on the right, not quite done. There's a little bit of concrete we still needed to clean up in that picture. And you can see we're loading a truck of rebar for recycling. But same thing, that facility will get backfilled as well to match the local terrain. And then if we go to the last slide, this was from last year, but just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what that looks like when I talk about backfilling. The picture on the left is probably 75% filling in that footprint. And the picture on the right, we'll call it 95%. Get the soil put in, get it compacted, get it to match the surrounding terrain so that when we walk away, it looks like we were never there, which is the whole intent of it. And I mentioned backfilling the Ox building. That's what we need to have accomplished next in the challenge with the schedule. So a complex process, making sure that everything is in the condition it needs to be in to leave the site. So we maybe underestimated the complexity of that a little bit. We've had some challenges this winter too. Besides those cold days being hard on people, it's even harder on the equipment. It's very sensitive equipment to make the type of measurements that we need. So below a certain temperature, we just can't do the work that we need to do. And if tomorrow holds true, we will not only lose being able to work tomorrow, but then it will take us Thursday to recover because we can't do the surveys through snow. We have to remove the snow or the water so that we can do the surveys. So all told, that's probably resulted in about a month of delay since I was here last time. Now, we are still on track for substantial completion in the third quarter of 2026, which is what I've been reporting for some time now. We're just farther into the third quarter. I'll also add that while sitting here, I got an email from the regulator that they won't be able to support the independent surveys they were supposed to come do the first week of April due to budgetary reasons. I have to understand what that looks like more before I can say what type of delay that may or may not result in. But we'll work through that. On the budget standpoint, we are still on track for our budget. We're going to meet our original estimate for this work. That's the end of my report. Any questions?
The regulator is the NRC.
The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, that's right.
Tim, does that delay cost us money?
I need to understand a little better right now. If it's only a week, like it indicated it might be, then no. Okay. But if it's a significant delay, then it could, which is one of those kind of unknowns. I think reference has been made to it just while I've sat in here is what's happening at the federal level and what impacts that has. The rest of the project is highly dependent on the regulator performing independent reviews or our PAPE documentation reviews. Once we understand better if there's going to be any impact to the NRC's capacity, then we'll have a better idea what that means for the project.
Thank you for that. Do we track everything, right? Do we track or will we track the extent to which delays are caused by those kinds of activities?
We have not specifically tracked delays by regulator to date because it hasn't been an issue,
Right.
but understanding it could be going forward, that's something that we'll keep an eye on.
And that's the potential impact to schedule is the main concern there.
That's correct. Potential impact of schedule, which does have some cost with it as well if you're continuing to keep the same number of people on site.
Yeah, and so is that a tightly restricted to only the NRC? Is there any opportunity for contract third-party verification survey or?
It actually is the NRC's third party that does the surveys, but they have to pay the third party, so that's how.
They won't do it without getting paid, is that?
That's what I believe to be the deal.
Of course. Thank you.
Hey, Tim, in your opinion, I mean, your team has done a fantastic job with this project. You can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming. What is what are the remaining critical paths for your team?
Yeah, so critical path right now is getting the area inside containment, that final cleaning done, the area around it backfilled, so we can take down containment, which then becomes critical path. That is expected to be done by the end of this year. Then it moves to shipping off the remaining material that we don't ship as it's being taken down, and then taking down the temporary structure that's used as a shipping facility. And then so we'll say that's the end of the first quarter, maybe beginning of second quarter, 2026. After that, it's almost exclusively radiological surveys. The actual physical work is done. So yeah, it's coming, but there's still plenty of work to be done that has to be done right.
Directors, anything else? Okay, well, thanks again, Tim. Appreciate the effort. As always, glad to hear things are continuing forward.
Thank you.
Sorry, next item, says Troy, but I'm seeing Scott. So, Scott, thanks.
Yeah, good afternoon. Scott Edom, the Director of Engineering Services. Today, we're going to talk about the replacement of some control valves recommendation. So just to level set, Sarpy County Station Units 4 and 5 are dual fuel, simple cycle combustion turbines providing about 100 megawatts of accredited generation capacity to our portfolio. The current hydraulic fuel and water control valve assemblies are obsolete and they are required for unit operation. The original manufacturer of these valves will no longer provide any technical support starting in 2027. Limited on-site spares are available. Mitsubishi Power Aero, the original equipment manufacturer for Sarpy County Unit 4 and 5, changed the control valve design from hydraulic to electric shortly after the units were commissioned in 2000. So therefore, spares of the existing valve design are limited nationwide as well. The current lead time for these new electric design valves are greater than a year. So our plan is to proactively replace the existing hydraulic valve assemblies with the new design electric valve assemblies in future planned outages. The original equipment manufacturer, or Mitsubishi Power Aero, is the only qualified source to design the control valve upgrade package for proper retrofit and function of the engines. There are 4 engines for those 2 units. An engineer's certificate has been prepared documenting these facts further. So I'm recommending that the board approve that engineer's certificate to allow negotiating a contract with Mitsubishi Power Aero for procurement of the upgraded control valve assemblies for units 4 and 5 at Sarpy County Station. And Aaron, I should have a picture on the next slide. So those are it. We have 3 valves per engine, 1 for liquid fuel, 1 for natural gas fuel, and 1 for water. And that's just a picture of the current hydraulic units. So there are 12 total between the 4 engines. Are there any questions?
Rough order of magnitude cost.
Be around $2 million for the 12.
Anybody else? Technical questions? Okay, process question, recommendation to authorize direct negotiation, not.
Correct.
Just a reminder, because that is our standard process, but this is the authorization to do something different. Okay, all good?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we've got an update that we talked about in the committee for quarter 719 and Brad Underwood. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Director Williams. So today we have Miss Robin Spady, our Director of Energy Regulatory Affairs. She's here to walk us through a subject the team brought to myself related to FERC Order 719. I'll do a bit of a spoiler without taking Spady's comments. FERC Order 719 is around demand response and a proposal for utilities to allow wholesale demand response. And so the subject discussion today is not on demand response and is it good or bad? We already know the answer to that. Demand response is very good. This conversation here today is around the process by which it's done. And is this or is this not in the best interest of OPPD and our customer owners? So having said that, turn it over to Ms. Spady.
Thank you, Brad. Good afternoon, everyone. So I just wanted to talk to you today about FERC Order 719. What is it? What are some of the risks? And what are we proposing as a potential action item? So as Brad had indicated, FERC Order 719 allows demand response resources and their aggregators to participate in the wholesale market. So again, this is separate from our retail programs. OPPD is considered within this requirement, even though we're public power, because one, it joined the wholesale markets in SPP and SPP regulates this, and also because our megawatt hour sales are over the 4 million FERC threshold. So we are within the parameters of FERC 719. So OPPD has the ability to opt out, which is common. Many other entities have done that. And because OPPD is public power, the board of directors are the authority which can decide to opt out, as you are the rate making authority for us. In investor-owned utility states, the State Public Utility Commission would be the entity that has the authority to make this decision. So like Brad said, it's important to remember what opting out does and does not do. Opting out would prevent OPPD and aggregators from offering wholesale demand response, but it would not change OPPD's commitment to its current demand response retail programs and the ability to expand these programs. So next slide. So this slide just provides examples for all of you of what demand response resources are. At its core, it is a customer's reduction in the consumption of energy in response to an increase in the price of energy or incentive payments to induce lower consumption. Next slide. This slide shows OPPD's current demand side management product offerings that we have with retail customers on both the energy efficiency basis and also for demand response. And as Brad and I have both said multiple times already, it's important to note that the opt-out will not alter OPPD's commitment to expand these programs. And any questions on any of these, I'll have to phone a friend, but these are our current product offerings. Next slide. So this slide provides you with totals of OPPD's DSM programs and shows you the increasing trend that we've had in utilization of these since 2018. Please note that OPPD is committed to, as you'll see in that box, pursuing the remaining 18 megawatts of demand response under resolution 6582. And as you see up at the top, and we'll see it on the next slide as well, it's important to note that the direct impact of OPPD's demand response activities equals 5.1% of its summer peak load. Any question? Next slide. So this slide shows a pure utility comparison. And as you can see, OPPD has the second highest percent of for demand response. And additionally, what I would consider our closest match here, at least from an RTO perspective and location, would be Evergy. You can see the difference between OPPD and Evergy on the amounts, both as percentage and on a megawatt value. So again, trying to be, and I think this shows being one of the leaders in using this on a retail basis within SPP and other RTOs. Okay, so next slide. So why are we trying to, or why are we bringing to you now this decision of whether or not to opt out? As you can see on the slide, there's multiple reasons for why we would want to opt out now, but I will tell you the primary reason that this analysis was triggered and that we brought it to Brad and Tim was because of recent FERC enforcement actions and settlements being reported out of FERC. There's been multiple demand response aggregators that have been fined by FERC this past year or so. Companies have been reported to create fictitious customers accounts, and others were caught, for lack of a better term, being creative in how they're forecasting and reporting their peaks, which FERC is saying is a market manipulation. So these fines have been multi-millions. In some cases, executives were held personally accountable on the aggregator side. And in cases where the distribution utilities like OPPD were the market participant, FERC sanctioned the distribution utilities, required them to disgorge millions in revenue and make FERC rate filings proving the disgorgement in fact happened. In addition to the financial risk, the FERC enforcement proceedings have shown the risk in correlating reputational risk to OPPD. If we have a demand response aggregator engaging in these behaviors in our service territory, the customers are going to equate that activity to us. There are additional technical and operational reasons to opt out at this point as well. It's complicated to coordinate metering with third parties. OPPD could enter into formal RTO, Regional Transmission Organization metering agreements that give us the highest visibility into what the third party aggregator is doing. But these agreements are complicated, would require additional staff, and FERC isn't honestly overly clear on what a compliance process would be needed in these places to track that third party activity. Other options have increased errors between third parties and OPPDs on the metering side. It's just really complicated to track at this point. Additionally, customers opting to participate in the wholesale market for demand response purposes would be dispatched on a 5-minute increment basis. And so it would be such a different reality for some of these customers than what they're experiencing on a retail demand response. So there is widespread precedent for opting out. OPPD is not the first to do this. We have a public power partner in the state that did this last year. And within MISO and SPP, which are two RTOs, ours and one right next to us, 16 of 20 states have fully opted out, while 5 are considering to opt back in. So that brings us to what I think is a good final point, is the fact of your decision if you make it on Thursday to opt out. If realities change, if there is a counterparty we're comfortable with, we can always opt back in at a different time. So next slide. So beyond the decision to opt out, what are the next steps? We are continuing to stay focused on capturing that final 18 megawatts of demand response. And also we are continuing to invest in technology to enable more customer freedom. And Aaron has been very diligent in providing updates to the board on all of those activities. So any questions, comments?
Directors?
Can I sum up? It sounds to me like this is a risk avoidance action at this point in time. We can't, it would not be a service to the people who are involved in demand response right now to be involved with, would not be a service to them for us to join them. And it would be a high risk for the organization as a whole.
Yeah, we're seeing it as a risk mitigation. So thank you for that.
Why would, I mean, are there advantages to staying in?
I, as a regulatory person, do not see the advantages to staying in, given the risks, the complexities, the additional staff that is necessary.
One of the things we do see is that all of those programs on the prior slide go forward and continue to go forward. And so I think maybe where my heart and mind go when I hear your question is like, you know, what's the upside here? And it's like, we don't need this for more upside. We can do these things and limit the risk that, quite honestly, we get entangled in one of these enforcement mechanisms that we don't want to give demand response a bad name.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound like there's a maybe I'm missing it, but it doesn't sound like there's a downside to opting out, right? Like there's not a market potential if we wanted to accept the risk, which is really high. There's not like a huge potential for high reward over there. It's just kind of, right?
Right, and I would probably have maybe tempered my recommendation a little bit if I didn't think that we could opt back in if circumstances changed or if we found partners. It's not a final forever decision.
I think the important thing here is gonna be to remain super aware and super connected in the industry. Is a direction that I've given Tim McCarty and his team to say, we need to continue to pursue different options for demand side management, distributed energy resources, aggregators. Right, so if the board votes to opt out, doesn't mean that Tim's team continues to engage with aggregators, potential aggregators, building out how the program could work, how can they integrate with us, work with our customer owners, and at some point when that is mature enough, we can opt back in under our rules with something a lot more managed. Potential downside of this is when we opt out, if we don't stay at the table, if we don't stay connected with potential aggregators, we could be sending a signal to other aggregators that say we don't want to work with you. And that's not what we want. But I think that risk can be mitigated again by continuing to stay plugged in the industry. I think what we're trying to do here is protect the district against the risk of bad actors. Robin said it in a very nice way, but you have companies who haven't not played by the rules, extracting revenues from customers, from utilities, without necessarily providing the demand response that they claim to be providing. They get fined, we can get fined, and it provides zero value to the region. So I think the idea was fantastic. The rules were not designed well enough to prevent bad actors from acting in a bad way. And I think this is where you see other utilities opting out, say, hey, time out. Good idea. FERC, we'll wait for FERC to issue better guidelines. And if they don't issue those guidelines, we can always opt back in once we have a better control of how we want to engage.
And I might be over my skis here, but my memory serves me correctly. SPP doesn't have a capacity market, but other RTOs do, which is maybe a better place for aggregation to occur. Is that right?
Yes, sir, correct.
So if SPP decides to create a capacity market for something like this, that's why it's important for us to stay involved in the meeting, because that may change the formula.
Yeah, great comment. Any sort of market reform, one way or the other, would always cause a review of these sorts of things, and does it make more sense to do more or less? So yeah, thank you for that question.
So if we opt out now, what is the timeline for opting back in? Is that just reverse board resolution, notice to FERC? What's if approved, how long does it take to get back to that?
I would want to double check that answer, but my understanding is it's pretty automatic. You make the decision and you are back in. It's not like a FERC rate filing. It doesn't take, a year to get that done. But I want to double check that for you.
Once the RERA acts, which is the authorized body, that they would be initiated, and you are the RERA.
Okay, yeah, and I mentioned this in the pre-committee meeting. I mean, I guess I'm a little hesitant to proactively remove a mechanism that could facilitate value. I guess to the third-party aggregators, which is not our responsibility, but also to customers who wish to participate in that. And we have a slide that highlights some of our programs, but we also have a number of areas where we don't currently have programs. And I've asked a couple times in the past, and I don't have clear guidance on what the timeline is for when we would develop those programs. There's a number of different areas: managed EV charging, batteries in homes, heat pumps, and other smart DER type things in homes and businesses. And so, Craig, to your point about what is the risk here, the protection is to the utility, I agree, and the benefit of the customer owners in aggregates. But the downside here is that customers who wish to do something different, we are kind of preventing them from finding a third-party aggregator for which they might want to participate in those services, and having that aggregator allow them access to something else. And so, if aggregators are bad actors, they don't provide value to the utility, they don't help the power pool broadly, but they also have an agreement with the participant to compensate them for participating in the program. And I know there's been some bad acting in that direction as well. But this does feel like a mechanism that if people wish to participate here, we do not have an offering for them at this time, other than the relatively few retail programs that we do have. And this does not allow them to find somewhere else to do that. And so without a timeline looking forward, what should people expect from us? And I would feel much more comfortable if we were more clear about, we say we're going to be working toward 18 megawatts. Do we have a specific timeline for what next steps will be taken to develop those programs to move things forward? And I've asked a couple questions about this over months and years, but I still don't really have a very clear timeline for that. And so again, I'm hesitant to wholeheartedly say, let's move away from a mechanism that can provide some type of value. And the primary beneficiary of that value is definitely the aggregator, who wants to participate in the wholesale market in a complicated manner. And they are using lots of small customers to provide the resource from which they extract value. But there is still a benefit to the customer individually who might want to participate there. Again, I have a battery in my own home and it does functionally nothing for me. Perhaps it provides some resilience, but there's no way for me to exercise it for any financial value to myself or any benefit to the utility broadly. I have no market signal, I have no mechanism. And so I think that we are at the leading edge of where some of these resources will become more available. And if we do not have answers for them, what should people do? There are some hundreds of batteries in our service territory right now, but they aren't really providing any specific value to either us or the power pool broadly. And without it, again, I guess I'm just hesitant to say, let's stop this proactively now before we come up with any kind of a specific plan for when we will reach some kind of an outcome for when we would have a program offering for customers to participate in. And I don't know if there's a response here, but this is something I've shared in the past is, there is risk from action, but there is also risk from inaction from not facilitating people participating with these new technologies as they come online. And I am hesitant to rush forward with saying, let's not change anything because there's some risk from implementing those changes without having an answer for when do we think we will see changes on our side.
I hear you, and we've had similar conversations with solar installers, for example. Right?
Yep.
And we developed a good mitigation, not perfect, but a good mitigation action in there with the Trade Ally program and vetting solar installers and working with them. But we still have bad actors working outside. I know it's painful to watch bad actors taking advantage of customers. But to your point, that's a contract that customers enter. The problem here is that in this particular instance, we can get fined millions of dollars. I don't know. We have some data from other utilities who have had to pay millions of dollars for something we didn't do. But because we have a distribution customer that engages with a bad actor, and somehow we get roped into that whole thing. And I think this is where the risk mitigation comes in to say, this is timeout. While I hear your passion for demand side management and having aggregators in our service territory, not acting on this resolution leaves us vulnerable and open to pay millions of dollars in fines for something that we're not even engaging with. So a bad actor comes in and sometimes outside of our knowledge, outside of the utilities knowledge, doing this work, and we can get fined. Tim or Brad?
I'm here to share a couple of additional notes for Director Williams' benefit and that of the team. One is we stand pretty proud of the performance of our demand side management programs in scale already. So acknowledging the comment that maybe it's over a narrow or a broader set of services. In terms of timing, Director Williams, I think we've perhaps covered that we're not able to provide exact certainty on the timing for the exact products you describe, and acknowledging that there are hundreds of batteries. Our focus around customer engagement and resource adequacy is working to try to affect customers in the thousands and tens of thousands at a whack, so to speak, trying to have broader and deeper impact. The timing of some of the things you describe are dependent upon technology dependencies, et cetera, that we're working to balance and prioritize across many other priorities that everything else we've talked about today is driving. So acknowledge the passion there. I also think that as we get to those sorts of specific applications, I would acknowledge it's a bit of speculation on my part, is where the opportunity pool is relatively small, though maybe enthusiastic and maybe very engaged. I wonder if aggregators who predominantly are operating from a profit incentive, a profit motive, would be any more eager to dive into a very tiny pool, a very small pool in terms of numbers. It would strike me that they would pursue broader tranches of customers that they could affect, they could get more profit from, and increases the very risk that we're trying to avoid. None of which prevents us from serving our customers well. The last thing I would say is, again, this is a bit of speculation, but Ms. Spady talked about the timing of when these things can be activated. What we know of the rules and what some of the aggregators talk about, it tends to be much more frequent, much shorter. Well, when we go out and talk with customers, be it residential or commercial, amount around, especially demand response, that strikes at the very equation that they make, or the judgment they make is, what's my financial remuneration and how disruptive is it to my life or my business? And consistently what we hear is, the more you strike it, even for short durations, that is disruptive to my life and it calls me to question the business case, so to speak, for my participation. So that's speculation on my part, but I don't think our customers, I don't believe our customers are going to be, notwithstanding certain specific tranches, missing out in mass from our opt-out. We'll still be able to serve them well.
I think the other thing that maybe we talked a bit about in the pre-committee settings, but I wonder if it'd be helpful for people to hear. If you look at our programs, and I'm going to call it 200-ish megawatts, 220, whatever it is, and we were in an event and the system operator went to strike and they didn't show up, that's a safety issue. And so the programs that we've built through high quality interaction with our customers really keep us out of that space, or at least reduce the potentiality for that kind of magnitude impact, which can be very significant, as I know the room is aware. The other thing is, Director Williams, the example that you gave on your house, we can't see your house. And so we're working very hard to fix that. And we've got those projects underway. We're spending a lot of money and an organizational time and effort to make sure that those can advance quickly and efficiently.
For the record, not just for you, but for everybody.
Yeah. But once we get that kind of base laid, right, we have higher customer sat because we can communicate with customers. Hey, we see your meters out, we're investigating it. Maybe we can send another message that says, here's what we found, and you know, we think it's this amount of duration to fix it. So once we get that exchange, we might be able to say, Director Williams, your battery is very valuable. And now that we can see it and that we have a mutual relationship to operate it, I would expect us to see those programs grow. And I think Tim has the same outlook. So I know you know a lot of that, but thank you for letting me maybe walk through that.
Yeah, and I am anxious to have that technology available that can enable more of these types of programs that we're talking about. And I know that the timeline is over the next year or two, we'll start getting into some of that stuff. And yes, I am a little anxious about having that available for more people to be able to participate. I guess and I appreciate the response from multiple people who have said, yes, we are working in this direction. And so I guess the answer is, we'll get through the AMI and we'll get programs implemented in the future. That's good. I guess please don't be surprised if I continue to ask, because this is the point where I think study after study has shown that efficiency and distributed resources are the fastest and cheapest to deploy. And when we talk about customer engagement and resource adequacy and needing to meet rapidly growing demand, there is something available to us, but right now we don't have mechanisms in place. And there is a mechanism which we, again, despite all of its risks, are proactively keeping from being implemented. So I guess I'm anxious to see this deployed broadly in the future. I want it to be done in the best way possible. And to your point, the risks to the utility and to the customers in aggregate are relatively high, and we should take responsibility to protect them. But, you know, I guess I just wanted to highlight that the other side of that is that there are some who are protected against themselves, I guess you might say, from being able to participate in things that they might want to, understanding the risks on their own. So we are kind of not allowing them an opportunity. And on balance, which of those is more important to us? I think it's pretty clear that protecting the utility and the customers in aggregate is the primary responsibility. But I guess I just want us to make sure that we also keep in mind there are new things that are available, and we need to initiate and understand programs for how those will become valuable to us and to our customer owners in the future. So I appreciate the discussion. And again, I shared some of this in the pre-committee meeting, and I look forward to more discussions about it in the future.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any thoughts? I know I have a lot of thoughts on this topic. I'm sorry for talking so much on it, but
I think it's really unfortunate that all of this stuff that needs to be done couldn't have been done like years ago. It would make life much easier.
I think that is, covers everything here today. So we do anticipate this being moved forward for an action item on the agenda on Thursday then. And we'll, have everybody vote then.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, everyone, for your responses to my detailed questions. And with that, that's the end of the Systems Management Nuclear Oversight Committee agenda. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Next is our confirmation of the agenda for Thursday. Is there anything that, excuse me, is there anything that anybody wants pulled off the consent agenda?
I will, maybe just for discussion, there are two things that for me come to mind that, for me, the litmus test is this important enough for us to have a full conversation at a board meeting? One is the financing, and we start talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. I tend to think that that's maybe worthwhile. And again, that's a question for the board. We want, and then I wonder about 13 CFO appointment. Again, I don't expect any like robust conversation necessarily, but it might be a nice time to say some things, some tips and caps. So any thoughts on either of them being board discussion action items?
On both.
Show the debt financing. Yeah, I think it should be separate, standalone. I mean, I don't think it should necessarily change much.
Yeah,
I do think there's a level of importance to that. It's not just normal business.
Right.
And I'd agree. 8 and 13. Anybody else have comments or any other items they'd like moved? All right, thank you. We'll move items 8 and 13 from the consent agenda to the discussion action items. Next is the review of the board work plan. Mr. Foch.
There are no items, no music committees, this is similar as last. I would offer here. This is a little different. Is there a second page there? On the second page here, there are a couple of items that have Bishop's name and Underwood will change the BLT lead to read Underwood. The other thing I would offer is that a few of these are policy refinements, I would say, and the intention is in the April meeting to bring forward a group of them just for housekeeping, and that should knock off about 4 of the items that are on this list in total. Over.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That is it for our regular agenda. Next, we'll take comments from the public on items of district business. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are a part of the official public record. We'll take comments in the room first and then via WebEx. Ms. Lane, do we have any people in the room?
We do not.
Okay. So for WebEx attendees, if you wish to make a comment, please send the meeting host a message using the chat feature or utilize the hand raise feature. Detailed instructions can be found on the OPPD website at the link shown on the screen. When I call on a member of the public to speak, please affirm that you can hear us before starting your comments. Please state your name, address, and the name of any organization or person you represent. Each individual will be allotted 3 minutes per matter pending. To assist you, we'll use the timer on the screen and signal you when 30 seconds remain, as well as when time is up. If you have written materials, please email them to corporatesecretary@oppd.com and they will be received on your behalf. For all activities, please direct your comments to me. I'll either respond to you directly or defer response to another board member or officer of the district. The board values and welcomes civil, respectful, clear, and concise communication from the public. During public comments, speakers should refrain from repetitious, profane, or irrelevant comments. Speakers shall refrain from polling the board as such vote is not on the agenda and is prohibited by law. Do we have anybody online who'd like to make a comment?
We do not.
Okay. Well, that is it, and the meeting's now adjourned.